5 telepathic signals that someone is thinking deeply about you. Psychology tips. The strongest connections don't need constant contact. They exist quietly, even when nothing is said. Have you ever felt a sudden shift in the air, as if someone stepped into your inner world without knocking? You were doing nothing special at all, reading a page, staring out a window, or sitting quietly with your own thoughts, when a familiar face appeared in your mind. Not invited, not forced, just there. Then a name followed. Soft, persistent, and suddenly a feeling arrived. Warm, heavy, or strangely comforting. It touched your chest before logic had a chance to speak. You paused. You wondered why this moment felt different, why it carried weight, why it refused to be ignored. That is not randomness. Don't dismiss it. Don't rush past it, because that is a telepathic signal. A quiet psychological bridge between two people who remain connected beneath the surface, even when life has pulled them apart. Psychology tips often point to this subtle truth. Focused thought carries energy, and emotion gives it direction. When someone thinks deeply about you, with attention, memory, and unresolved feeling, that energy looks for you. It finds you. It makes itself known. Be aware of how your body reacts in these moments. The calm, the ache, the sudden clarity. That response is part of the signal. You must understand this is not about fantasy or illusion. This is about human connection, emotional resonance, the way the subconscious speaks when words fall short. That is why these moments arrive unannounced. That is why they surface during silence, when your mind is open and unguarded. Love advice grounded in psychology tips reminds us to notice patterns, not isolated moments. When the same person appears again and again with emotional force, it reveals a loop of attention that has not been closed. Don't overthink it. Don't chase it. But don't ignore it either. Observe it. Respect it. Let it teach you how deeply human connection can travel without a single message being sent. Because love advice that truly matters is rarely loud or dramatic. It is quiet, persistent, deeply felt. And when someone is thinking about you this way, their mind is reaching out, asking to be acknowledged, asking to be understood. Psychology tips leave us with one clear truth you must remember. What you feel without explanation is often the most honest signal of all. Pause for a moment and breathe. Notice what has been quietly pulling at your attention lately, because when someone is thinking about you deeply, that energy does not stay silent. It reaches out and finds you. This is not imagination or wishful thinking. Psychology tips remind us that focused thought always leaves a trace, even across distance. You may not fully understand what you are feeling yet, but you can feel it, and that matters. What comes next are not coincidences. They are signals. Let's begin. 1. You sense their energy without warning. It arrives quietly. No noise. No announcement. There are moments in life that don't come with explanations. No clear reason. No obvious trigger. Nothing you can point to and say, "This is why I feel this way." Your day begins normal, stable, quiet. You feel centered in yourself. Nothing is wrong. Nothing is missing. And then, without warning, something shifts inside you. A sudden heaviness settles in your chest. A soft warmth spreads through your body. A calm arrives that wasn't there seconds ago. Or a sadness surfaces that doesn't belong to your present moment. You pause, confused, not because the feeling is strong, but because it has no source. That's when you realize something important. This feeling didn't come from you. It didn't grow out of your thoughts. It wasn't triggered by memory, stress, or exhaustion. It didn't originate in your life at all. It came from somewhere else, from someone else. When a person thinks about you with real depth, not casually, not briefly, but with emotion that carries weight, those thoughts don't stay confined to their mind. Thoughts charged with love, longing, regret, or unresolved emotion carry energy. And energy doesn't sit still. It moves. It reaches outward. When two people once shared an emotional rhythm, when they understood each other beyond words, that rhythm doesn't simply disappear because time passed or silence grew. Emotional connections don't dissolve on command. Distance doesn't mute them. Silence doesn't erase them. Instead, they linger beneath the surface, quiet but alive. You may feel this connection physically before you understand it mentally. A gentle heat spreading across your chest, like your heart is opening without effort. A subtle pull inside your body, almost electrical in nature. Sometimes it arrives as a soft heaviness, other times as an unexpected sense of peace. It can feel like someone stepped into your emotional space without knocking. Don't rush to push it away. Don't immediately explain it off. Just be present with it. In spiritual language, this is often described as empathic resonance. In practical terms, it means your emotional system is responding to a signal it didn't create. This is one of those psychological experiences that rarely gets discussed, not because it isn't real, but because it requires awareness instead of noise. Imagine this. You're alone in the evening. The room is quiet. The outside world has slowed down. Your mind isn't focused on anyone in particular. You aren't searching. You aren't reminiscing. And then suddenly, their face appears in your thoughts. Clear, sharp, uninvited. Emotion rises instantly. You smile without knowing why, or your throat tightens. Your chest feels full. Your body reacts before logic has time to intervene. Your breathing changes. Your heart subtly adjusts its rhythm. For a brief moment, you feel close to them, closer than distance should allow. That is the first signal of emotional energy crossing space. When someone thinks about you with enough intensity, their emotion creates a current. And that current doesn't follow physical rules. It moves through memory, connection, and shared emotional history. Your deeper awareness recognizes it even when your mind wants to remain skeptical. It feels like tuning into a frequency you forgot existed. These experiences often happen during quiet moments for a reason. Early mornings, late nights, times when your guard is down. When distractions fade, perception sharpens. Your internal awareness becomes more sensitive, and in that stillness, you receive more than you expect. Don't rush to rationalize it away. Be honest about what you felt. That feeling carried meaning. Many people, especially men, are taught to dismiss experiences like this, to demand proof, to override intuition, to ignore internal signals unless they can be measured or explained. But real psychological insight and honest emotional wisdom don't ask you to deny your inner world. They ask you to observe it calmly. Here's something important to understand. Sensing someone's energy does not mean you are stuck in the past. It does not mean you are weak, attached, or unable to move forward. It means you are aware. It means your emotional intelligence is intact. Your capacity to feel deeply hasn't been shut down. And that awareness is not a flaw, it's a strength. Notice the feeling. Acknowledge it. Let it move through you naturally. Don't cling to it. But don't deny it either. Because when someone is thinking about you with depth, real depth, their emotions don't stay confined to their own inner world. Sometimes they cross the quiet distance and touch yours. And your heart responds long before your mind begins asking questions. That is an imagination. That is connection. And understanding this may be one of the most overlooked insights in psychology and one of the most grounded, honest forms of emotional wisdom you'll ever encounter. 2. You see signs, patterns, or repeating synchronicities. Dear friend, when you begin to notice signs, patterns, and repeating synchronicities in your life, it is worth pausing and paying attention. These moments are not random background noise, and they are not meaningless coincidences. They carry precision. They carry timing. And most importantly, they carry information. When another person is thinking about you consistently, with emotional intensity and focus, that mental activity does not remain confined inside their head. Sustained thought creates momentum, and momentum leaves traces in the external world. This is often how it starts. Numbers begin repeating 1111, 222, 333, appearing again and again, not once or twice, but persistently. A name you are not looking for shows up in unexpected places, on a screen, in a book, in a conversation that has nothing to do with them. A song tied to shared memories plays at the exact moment your emotional defenses are lowered. Dreams become vivid, emotionally charged, and difficult to forget, lingering long after you wake. These experiences feel pointed, almost deliberate, because they are experienced that way by the mind. This is not fantasy or magical thinking. This is alignment. The human mind is wired to recognize meaning when internal and external events overlap with precision. Modern psychology acknowledges this phenomenon as meaningful coincidence, moments where events align in ways that go beyond simple probability. When coincidence repeats with emotional weight and accuracy, the mind does not dismiss it easily because the pattern feels personal. The mind does not operate in isolation. Thought carries direction. Emotion carries force. When direction and force combine, patterns begin to emerge. Focus shapes perception, and perception shapes experience. Reality reflects sustained attention. Reality responds to intensity. This is why emotionally charged connections leave lasting imprints, even after physical contact ends. When two people have shared something genuine, something layered with emotion, memory, and meaning, that connection does not simply vanish with time. It transforms. It quiets down. It moves into the background. And then, often unexpectedly, it resurfaces through signals, through reminders you did not ask for, through mirrors placed in ordinary moments. You try to move forward, yet everything seems to point backward. Their favorite color suddenly appears everywhere. A phrase they once used comes out of a stranger's mouth. A familiar scent cuts through the air without warning. These experiences are not punishment, and they are not traps. They are resonance. They indicate that something unfinished still exists in the psychological field you once shared. The mind, once expanded by emotional experience, does not shrink back to its former state. Neither does the heart. Especially in modern life, where distractions are constant, silence is rare, and reflection is often avoided, the mind uses symbols to communicate when direct contact is absent. Symbols are efficient. They bypass resistance. That is why these moments feel intimate. They're experienced as personal because they originate in personal memory and emotion. Somewhere, someone is revisiting you internally, thinking, replaying, reflecting. That internal activity does not stay contained. It presses outward. The environment becomes the messenger. This does not mean action is required, but it does mean awareness is useful. One of the most valuable psychological insights you can receive in these moments is this: do not rush to label everything as coincidence. Coincidence does not repeat with precision. Coincidence does not arrive layered with emotional charge. Coincidence does not persist over time. Patterns do. Signals do. Meaningful repetition does. The lesson here is not obsession. It is recognition. Recognition restores clarity. Clarity restores control. And control gives you choice. Instead of reacting with confusion or nostalgia, you can respond with grounded awareness. For men navigating relationships, memory, and unresolved emotional connections, this awareness is essential. There is no need to panic. There is no need to romanticize blindly. Strength comes from staying grounded. Ask yourself what the signal is pointing toward. Is it closure? Is it action? Is it acceptance? Or is it discipline? The discipline to let the pattern inform you without pulling you backward? You have power over your mind, even when you do not control external events. The signal does not command you. It informs you. It sharpens awareness. It gives you data. What you do with that data is where maturity shows itself. In a world driven by speed, distraction, and constant noise, these patterns serve as reminders to slow down and observe. Someone's thoughts reach you because thought seeks completion. Emotional energy seeks resolution. That does not mean reunion is required. It means understanding is required. Real strength lies in deciding how you meet these moments, with wisdom rather than impulse, with restraint rather than fantasy, with intention rather than reaction. Use these experiences as psychological information, not emotional chaos. Let them refine you. Let them clarify your next move, not anchor you to the past. The universe rarely shouts. It repeats. And repetition is instruction. Stay observant. Stay steady. This is how quiet mastery is built. This is how you remain in command of your inner world while understanding the unseen connections shaping your outer one. 3. You feel an unseen presence, like they're spiritually near. The third, and perhaps the most powerful, telepathic signal is the sensation of an unseen presence, the quiet but unmistakable feeling that someone is near you even when no one is physically there. This experience often arrives without warning. It can feel like a subtle shift in the atmosphere, a sudden pause in your thoughts, or a moment where your awareness sharpens for no obvious reason. You may feel goosebumps rise across your skin, not from fear, but from a sense of warmth or familiarity. You might even feel an instinctive urge to turn around, fully expecting to see them standing behind you. And when you do not, the feeling does not vanish. It lingers, calm, intimate, and undeniable. Do not dismiss this too quickly. Slow down. Be still. This is not randomness. Psychology teaches us that the mind is far more perceptive than we often allow ourselves to believe, especially when emotion is involved. Thought is not static, and emotion does not remain contained within one individual. When someone thinks about you deeply, emotionally, spiritually, or romantically, that focused attention carries energy. That energy does not stop at physical distance. It moves. It arrives. It settles. It leaves an imprint, almost like a quiet visit that communicates without words, "I'm thinking of you," or "You still matter to me." You may notice this sensation most clearly when your mind is relaxed and unguarded, during moments of calm reflection, meditation, or when you are drifting between sleep and waking. In these states, the noise of logic softens. The defenses of the conscious mind loosen. Your inner awareness becomes receptive. This is when connection is strongest, when the analytical mind steps aside and something deeper listens. Awareness sharpens not because you are trying to sense something, but because you are no longer blocking it. Do not rush to explain the experience away. Stay present with it. Strong emotional bonds create lasting psychological and energetic connections, especially when love was genuine or separation was painful. Psychology reminds us that unresolved emotional ties do not simply disappear with time. They do not dissolve. They transform. They move quietly beneath the surface, shaping perception, memory, and awareness while waiting for moments of openness to rise again. Sometimes this connection expresses itself through dreams, vivid, emotionally rich experiences where you encounter the other person as if no time has passed. The interaction feels natural, unforced, real. You may wake with a strange certainty that something meaningful occurred, something more than a simple replay of memory. The emotional clarity that follows, the calm, the longing, the sense of closeness, can feel sharper and more grounded than ordinary dreams. These dreams leave residue. They stay with you throughout the day. Do not label this as imagination too quickly. Imagination tends to be fragmented and unstable. These experiences feel cohesive. They feel intentional. They carry emotional coherence rather than chaos. That is not coincidence. That is a meeting of awareness. When two minds have been deeply connected, especially through shared vulnerability or emotional intensity, that connection can express itself beyond conscious thought. Energy shaped by deep care does not disappear. It circulates. It seeks balance. And when someone thinks of you with sustained intensity, that energy can surround you like an invisible presence, a silent reassurance rather than noise, a quiet acknowledgement rather than intrusion. It does not demand your attention. It simply makes itself known. There is no need to fear this sensation. Stay grounded. Psychology-based love advice teaches that sensitivity is not weakness. It is awareness. Awareness allows you to recognize when a connection still exists, even if circumstances, distance, or time have changed. Strength lies in your ability to observe without becoming consumed, to feel without becoming attached. The signal itself is not a command. It does not require action. It does not ask you to chase the past or reopen wounds. It is information. It tells you that the bond was real. It tells you that it left a mark. It confirms that the human mind and heart are capable of reaching farther than logic alone can fully explain. Mature awareness means allowing the feeling to pass through you without resistance and without obsession. Let it inform you, not control you. Let it remind you of depth, not distract you from direction. You are not meant to live inside the signal. You are meant to understand it. Be calm. Be observant. The quiet presence you feel is the third telepathic sign. Recognizing it does not mean you are trapped in memory. It means you acknowledge the depth of a connection that once existed and the subtle ways it can still echo through your awareness. Sometimes that echo brings insight. Sometimes it brings closure. Sometimes it simply offers understanding that certain connections leave impressions long after words are gone, and that awareness, when held with discipline and clarity, becomes strength rather than confusion. For your intuition becomes unusually sharp when it comes to them. There are moments when you are not trying to think about them at all, yet you know. Not through logic, not through memory. You simply know. Calmly, cleanly. Your intuition sharpens the instant their name drifts through your inner space, and it feels less like effort and more like recognition. You sense their sadness without evidence. You sense their attention without a message. You sense movement inside them even when everything on the surface is still. This is not guessing. Guessing carries tension. Guessing rushes. Guessing demands proof. Intuition does none of that. It arrives quietly. It settles without noise. It does not argue its case. It just stands there, steady and complete. Psychology tips often explain this as subconscious awareness shaped by deep emotional connection, but that phrase barely captures the experience. When two people have truly shared understanding, not just conversation, not just time, but resonance, the mind learns their emotional patterns the way the body learns balance. You must understand this clearly. The brain does not stop listening just because words stop arriving. It keeps track. It notices shifts. It remembers tone, rhythm, presence. Over time, it becomes fluent in signals that never pass through speech. That is why you can recognize a familiar person entering a room by the sound of their breath alone, before your eyes confirm it. The body knows first. The mind follows. Do not confuse this with imagination. Imagination is loud. It pushes. It demands action. Intuition does not. Be precise here. Intuition never pressures you. It never creates urgency. It never pulls you into spirals of overthinking. That is how you tell the difference. Intuition clarifies. It steadies. It sharpens your awareness without stealing your peace. That is why it does not make you anxious. That is why it does not make you lose control. That is why it leaves you clearer than before. When someone is thinking about you with emotional depth, the connection activates a subtle layer of perception within you, and you feel it not because you are searching, but because you are listening. Be still enough, and it becomes obvious. Do not chase signs. Do not interrogate every thought. Do not turn quiet knowing into restless interpretation. That is not intuition's job. Your job is to notice. That is all. Psychology tips and love advice often miss this point by overcomplicating it, by turning something natural into something mystical or dramatic. This experience is neither. It is grounded. It is human. It is the result of shared emotional history leaving traces in the nervous system. When the connection was real, the imprint remains. And when the other person turns inward and thinks of you deeply, that imprint responds. Not with fireworks, with clarity. That is the key detail most people overlook. True intuition feels ordinary in the best possible way. It feels like truth that does not need decoration. You must trust the calmness of it. You must trust the lack of urgency. You must trust how it does not ask you to act, react, or reach out. It simply informs you. That is why mature love advice emphasizes emotional regulation rather than obsession. Awareness without attachment. Knowing without grasping. Presence without pursuit. If you are unsettled, it is not intuition. If you are frantic, it is not intuition. If you feel grounded, composed, and quietly certain, that is it. That is the signal. And when this happens, when your intuition sharpens specifically around one person, it is not coincidence. It is connection expressing itself at a deeper frequency. You are not invading their mind. You are not reading thoughts. You are responding to a shared emotional language learned over time. Psychology tips describe this as subconscious attunement, but lived experience describes it more simply. You feel them because you once understood each other deeply. And that understanding does not disappear just because silence arrives. It changes form. It moves underground. It speaks softly. Be attentive. Be honest with yourself. Do not dramatize it. Do not dismiss it either. That balance is where wisdom lives. And that is how you recognize the difference between fleeting thoughts and genuine telepathic signals shaped by emotional depth, experience, and real human connection. 5. You feel a quiet sense of completion or readiness after the signal passes. This is the final sign, and it is the one most people miss. After the feeling arrives, after the memory rises, after the invisible presence brushes against you without warning, everything softens. No chaos, no mental noise, no urge to act right now. That absence matters. What replaces it is subtle but unmistakable. A sense of closure. A gentle click as if something has been acknowledged and filed where it belongs. Like a letter finally read and placed back in its envelope. The energy ran its course. It didn't linger. It didn't demand more. You breathe deeper. Your shoulders loosen. Your mind returns to the present without effort. That is how you know the signal has completed its work. Psychology tells us something important here. When an emotional cycle is fully recognized, without avoidance and without clinging, the brain releases the tension tied to it. No drama required. No follow-up necessary. The system resets on its own. You don't need to act. You don't need to reach out. You don't need to explain. Understanding has already happened. This is where many people get it wrong. They assume that if someone is thinking about them, there must be a response. A message. A move. A reopening of old doors. But emotional maturity often looks like the opposite. It looks like knowing when stillness is the right answer. Don't rush. Don't chase meaning where it has already settled. Be present. Not every connection asks to be continued. Not every signal calls for a reply. Some exist only to confirm one simple truth: what once mattered was real. That's it. And when you can feel that truth without losing your balance, you've reached a high level of inner control. This is not indifference. It's clarity. The difference is everything. This is where feelings stop running the show. This is where memories loosen their grip. This is where you stand steady, awake, and grounded. Telepathic signals don't arrive to pull you back into the past. They arrive to test whether you're clear enough to move forward. If you remain calm after the signal fades, that calm is the message. Now let's slow this down and make it practical, especially for men who've lived long enough to know that emotions don't announce themselves with warning labels. At this stage of life, you've carried responsibility. You've made hard calls. You've learned that not every thought deserves your reaction. This sign respects that wisdom. It doesn't shout. It doesn't push. It simply arrives, does its job, and leaves. Think of it like the echo after a bell rings. The sound fades, but you're changed by having heard it. You don't chase the echo. You let it dissolve. That is emotional intelligence in action. Modern psychology tips often focus on action, communicate, process, express. All useful tools when timing is right. But timing is everything. This sign is about restraint, about knowing that awareness alone can complete a cycle. Be honest with yourself. If the signal passes and you feel settled, that's not avoidance. That is resolution. This is especially important when it comes to love advice. Many men are taught that love requires constant movement. Fix something. Prove something. Do something. But deep connection also respects silence. It respects completion. Ask yourself one clear question: do I feel pulled or do I feel whole? If you feel whole, don't disturb that state. You must understand this. Peace after a signal is not emptiness. It is integration. The mind has processed the experience. The nervous system has stood down. The lesson, whatever it was, has landed. And here's the part most people overlook. This readiness you feel isn't about them. It's about you. Readiness to stay present. Readiness to choose wisely. Readiness to move forward without carrying unnecessary weight. That's strength defined quietly. In psychology, tips aimed at long-term emotional health, this moment is gold. It means you're no longer driven by unresolved loops. You're responding, not reacting. That shift changes everything, from how you handle relationships to how you sleep at night. Let's be clear. Don't confuse calm with lack of feeling. Don't confuse stillness with distance. Be precise with your inner language. This is completion, not suppression. And when it comes to love advice, this sign is a reminder that connection doesn't always mean continuation. Sometimes it means acknowledgement, respect, and release all in one breath. That ability grows with experience, with age, with reflection. So if the signal comes, if the memory flickers, if the presence passes through your awareness and afterward you feel steady, that is confirmation. You're not being pulled backward. You're being checked for clarity. And if you remain composed, no urgency, no confusion, that's the clearest signal of all. You are in control of yourself. Dear friend, and here's how you know it's real and not something your imagination cooked up, because that question matters and you deserve a grounded answer. You might ask yourself, how can I be sure this isn't just in my head? Be honest. That question alone shows awareness. Imagination is deliberate. It requires effort. You choose it. You guide it. But when a thought crashes into your awareness without permission, when it arrives fully formed and pulls emotion from your chest or sends a quiet signal through your body, that is different. That is not something you planned. Don't dismiss that distinction. Be clear about it. True telepathic experiences arrive unannounced. They show up on ordinary days, when you weren't reminiscing, when nothing reminded you, when life was simply moving along. And yet there it is. A sudden warmth, a heaviness, a sense of closeness you can't explain. You may try to brush it aside. Don't. It lingers anyway. It hides in a lyric on the radio. It slips into a dream. It waits for you in silence. That is because real telepathic energy is felt, not forced, and psychology tips often remind us that what the mind cannot manufacture, the body still recognizes. Be present. Acknowledge it. That is when it softens. Now here's the deeper layer most people miss. We are not only physical beings moving through time. We are energetic beings leaving traces behind us. Every meaningful bond creates a quiet exchange of frequency, a shared rhythm that doesn't disappear just because circumstances change. When you genuinely care about someone, something of you stays with them, and something of them stays with you. That connection doesn't end neatly. It fades slowly, if at all. Sometimes these moments surface to remind you that someone still holds love for you, or that forgiveness is waiting to be offered, or that closure is finally within reach. Don't panic when this happens. Don't romanticize it either. Be grounded. These signals are not meant to pull you backward. They are meant to wake you up. They ask you to notice what still needs attention, what still carries meaning, and what can finally be released with clarity. That is the balance psychology tips and love advice often point toward, but rarely explains so simply. Love leaves impressions. Energy remembers. And when something real reaches for your awareness, it does so with purpose. Be calm. Be honest with yourself. You must understand this. Telepathic signals are not about obsession or fantasy. They're about awareness, growth, and emotional truth. Let them teach you. Let them pass through you. And when the message is clear, move forward with steadiness, wisdom, and self-respect, because love advice at its best doesn't trap you in yesterday. It helps you walk confidently into what comes next. And then when you feel that quiet inner signal, the sudden pull on your awareness, the unspoken presence of someone thinking deeply about you, the instruction is simple and firm. Do not panic and do not spiral into analysis, because clarity never comes from mental noise. It comes from stillness. Slow your breathing. Settle your body. Let your mind stand at attention. Then ask yourself, with discipline and honesty, what you are actually feeling right now, because emotion is the language of the subconscious and awareness is the doorway to control. Notice what memory rises without force. Notice whether the sensation feels calm or weighted. Calm is a signal of care, respect, or unresolved affection reaching you across distance. Weight is not a threat. It is unfinished emotion seeking resolution. As Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This is where real psychology tips matter. You do not respond with words. You respond with intention. You send steadiness. You send clarity. You silently acknowledge the connection and release it with peace, because mastery comes from alignment, not attachment. This is love advice for modern men navigating complex emotional landscapes in a hyper-connected world where thoughts travel faster than messages and energy speaks louder than text. Do not chase meaning. Command it. Do not absorb what is not yours. Redirect it. As Marcus Aurelius reminded us, you have power over your mind, not outside events. That power is exercised here. Stay grounded. Stay composed. Stay deliberate. When you meet these moments with calm authority, you sharpen intuition, strengthen emotional intelligence, and move through life unburdened and victorious. These psychology tips are not about fantasy. They're about awareness, control, and self-respect. This love advice is about leadership of the inner world. Master this, and you master yourself. Don't panic when this happens. Don't romanticize it either. Be grounded. These signals are not meant to pull you backward. They are meant to wake you up. They ask you to notice what still needs attention, what still carries meaning, and what can finally be released with clarity. That is the balance psychology tips and love advice often point toward but rarely explains so simply. Love leaves impressions. Energy remembers. And when something real reaches for your awareness, it does so with purpose. Be calm. Be honest with yourself. You must understand this. Telepathic signals are not about obsession or fantasy. They're about awareness, growth, and emotional truth. Let them teach you. Let them pass through you 51, and when the message is clear, move forward with steadiness, wisdom, and self-respect, because love advice at its best doesn't trap you in yesterday. It helps you walk confidently into what comes next. The beauty of an invisible connection. Isn't it beautiful to know that even in silence, someone's energy can still find you? No words. No signals on a screen. Just a quiet pull. That is not coincidence. That is connection. Distance doesn't cancel real emotion. Time doesn't erase it. Silence doesn't weaken it. When a bond is built on something genuine, it moves differently. It travels without sound. It shows up when you least expect it. A song plays at the exact right moment. A memory rises for no clear reason. A calm, heavy feeling settles in your chest. Be aware. That is not random. When you feel these telepathic signals, take them as a gift, not a burden. Don't overthink them. Don't rush to explain them away. Be still. Let them arrive. They mean your inner world brushed against someone else's in a way that goes deeper than conversation. That is something the universe itself seems to respect. Someone may be thinking deeply about you right now. They may not call. They may not write. They may never say it out loud, but their thoughts still move. They travel through music that suddenly feels personal, through dreams that feel vivid and close, through emotional waves that arrive without warning. That is the power of unseen love. Quiet, steady, real. Don't chase proof. Don't demand certainty. Be grounded instead. These moments are not about control. They are about awareness. Psychology tips often remind us that the mind and emotions are more connected than we're taught to believe. Love advice for men especially comes down to this. Trust what you feel, but stay balanced. That is strength. Pay attention. Stay open. Respect the silence. Because sometimes the deepest connections speak without a single word. Here's something important to remember. Telepathic signals aren't magic tricks or fantasies. They're signs of how deeply connected humans really are. When you feel a sudden emotion, a quiet pull toward someone, or a strange coincidence that won't leave your mind, don't rush to dismiss it. Pause. Breathe. Trust what you're sensing. The real advice here is simple and grounded. Pay attention to your inner world. Your thoughts, emotions, and intuition are constantly giving you information. When you learn to listen calmly instead of reacting impulsively, you become more aware, more centered, and more confident in your relationships and in yourself. Connection doesn't always need words. Sometimes it moves through energy, through love, through the silent language of the soul. And when you respect that silence, you also learn to respect yourself. So take care of your mind, protect your energy, and stay open, but stay grounded. If someone is thinking deeply about you, let it remind you of your worth, not your doubts. Thanks for watching. Stay mindful, stay strong, and I'll see you in the next video. When someone is on your mind all the time, these 3 things are happening to that person. Psychology tips. Have you ever noticed how one person can quietly take up space in your head all day long? You can be busy, working, driving, watching something, talking with friends, and then out of nowhere, their face shows up. They laugh, their name. A little moment you didn't even try to remember. You tell yourself, I'm fine. I'm not going to reach out. So you don't call, you don't text, you keep your pride, keep your distance, yet somehow they still sit in the back of your mind like a song you can't turn off. But here's the truth most people don't talk about. When someone stays on your mind constantly, it's not always an obsession. It's not always a weakness. Sometimes it's your heart picking up a signal your mouth refuses to admit. And if that's happening to you, there's a good chance 3 things are also happening on their side, whether they realize it or not. Whether you believe it or not isn't something to argue about. Right now, let's get straight to the point. What those 3 things are, why they happen, and what's really going on behind all of it. Part 1. The universe is trying to tell you something. When a person keeps appearing in your mind day after day, understand this clearly. It is not random, it is not weakness, and it is not nostalgia playing tricks on you. It is information. The universe uses repetition because repetition creates results. Albert Einstein once said, "The most important decision we make is whether we believe we live in a friendly or hostile universe." A man with experience knows this. The universe does not send meaningless signals. It sends lessons, quietly, persistently. And when a person keeps returning to your thoughts, there are usually 3 things happening inside you and on the other side. First, there is unresolved emotional energy, not drama, not fantasy, not longing. It is an unfinished loop. An old Stoic understands that a disciplined mind does not repeat without purpose. The mind repeats to solve, too close, to integrate what was learned. This is Stoicism in action. You observe the signal. You don't panic. You don't romanticize. You analyze. Emotions are not the enemy. Lack of clarity is. Second, there is subconscious imprinting happening in both directions. Attention rarely flows one way for long. Psychology shows that when someone occupies your mental space consistently, you often occupy theirs as well, especially when pride, distance, or bad timing prevents closure. This aligns closely with female psychology, where emotional bonds often remain active beneath the surface even after communication stops. Not attachment, not an obsession. Meaning left unfinished. Third, there is a lesson being presented to strengthen you. Life does not repeat faces to trap men. It repeats lessons to train them. Carl Jung said it best. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So the real question is not why you are thinking about them. The real question is what you are meant to understand now. In modern life, men between responsibility, pressure, aging, and shifting relationships often confuse reflection with regret. They are not the same. Reflection sharpens, regret drains. Stoicism teaches separation, feeling from action, signal from impulse, memory from mission. A high-value man does not chase thoughts blindly. He interrogates them, calmly, directly. He asks himself, is this about forgiveness? Is this about closure? Is this about truth? Or is this about growth? Unfinished emotional loops steal focus. Focus is currency. Focus is power. And power determines the quality of a man's life. In relationships, understanding female psychology helps you see clearly. Silence does not mean absence, and distance does not mean indifference. But the goal is not reunion through fantasy. The goal is mastery. Mastery over reaction. Mastery over meaning. Mastery over direction. That is how a high-value man moves through the world. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This recurring thought is not blocking your progress. It is shaping it if you allow it to do its job. When you process the lesson fully, whether that means forgiving internally, releasing expectations, or acknowledging what that connection taught you, the loop ends. And when the loop ends, strength returns, because clarity restores momentum. This is why the old Stoic path still works today. It trains you to stand firm without suppressing emotion. It trains you to move forward without inner chaos. This is timeless Stoicism applied to modern life. Calm mind, clear direction, disciplined heart. That is the structure. Remember this, the universe does not haunt men who are lost. It trains men who are ready. And if a name keeps returning to your mind, it is not asking you to go backward. It is demanding that you level up. Extract the wisdom, close the chapter correctly, and move forward stronger, quieter, and more decisive than before. Victory in life is not about controlling people. It is about mastering your inner world. Once you do that, alignment follows, opportunity follows, peace follows, and that is the mark of a man who truly understands the game. Story moment. David was 52 when the pattern finally became impossible to ignore. He had a stable career, grown children, and a life that looked solid from the outside. Yet every night, usually when the house was quiet, the same woman crossed his mind. Not his ex-wife, not a fantasy, just someone from 15 years ago, a colleague he worked closely with during a demanding phase of his life. They never crossed a line. They never even talked about feelings. Then life moved on, or so he thought. At first, David treated the thoughts like noise, stress, aging, boredom. He pushed them aside the way men are taught to do, but the thoughts didn't fade. They returned with precision. Her name, a conversation they never finished, a moment when he chose pride instead of honesty. That's when the old Stoic in him stopped resisting and started observing. He didn't ask, "Why do I miss her?" He asked, "What is unfinished here?" David began journaling. No drama, just facts. What he realized surprised him. He didn't want the woman. He wanted the version of himself he was becoming back then. Focused, alive, purposeful. She had seen that man clearly, and when he walked away without closure, he abandoned more than a connection. He abandoned a lesson. That insight changed everything. From a psychological standpoint, it made sense. He later learned that unresolved emotional bonds often persist quietly, especially when mutual respect existed. That insight aligned with what he'd read about female psychology, not fixation, but lingering meaning. The thought loop wasn't pulling him backward. It was pointing at something incomplete. So, David acted. Not impulsively, intentionally. He didn't reach out to restart anything. He wrote a letter he never sent. In it, he acknowledged the truth he avoided years earlier. He forgave himself for choosing comfort over courage. Then he burned the letter, simple, clean, done. What followed was clarity. The thoughts stopped looping. His energy returned. He began training again, refocused his work, reclaimed discipline. This was Stoicism in practice, using reflection to regain control, not drown in emotion. That's what separates a high-value man from a distracted one. He doesn't chase feelings, he extracts meaning. Months later, David described it best in one sentence. The universe wasn't reminding me of her, it was reminding me of myself. That realization didn't weaken him, it sharpened him. He didn't go backward, he leveled up. And that's the real lesson. When someone stays on your mind, it's rarely about them. It's about who you're being asked to become next. Part 2, they are thinking about you too. When someone keeps popping into your mind day after day, here's the first thing you need to know. Thoughts usually don't go in just one direction. This isn't your imagination. This isn't you overthinking. It's awareness. Life experience and psychology both show that when you think about someone again and again, especially with a real feeling behind it, something is happening on their side too. They're thinking about you as well. Maybe not on purpose, maybe not in a romantic way, but on a mental and emotional level, there's a connection still active. You're not making it up. You're picking up on something real. The human mind is wired for connection. In modern life, attention is fractured, time is scarce, and energy is guarded. So when one person cuts through the noise of your routine, it means something remains unresolved, unfinished meaning, unspoken resonance. Carl Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." Shared mental space reveals shared emotional relevance. This is not fantasy. This is how the mind works. You think of someone after years of silence, and suddenly they appear online. You dream of them, and their name resurfaces the next day. That is not randomness. That is synchronization. Psychology calls it emotional memory activation. Two minds, once bonded, trigger the same neural pathways when emotion is attached. The old Stoic thinkers understood this long before science had words for it. The old Stoic taught that whatever occupies your mind deserves examination, not indulgence. This is where Stoicism matters. Stoicism is not about denying feelings, it is about mastering it. A high-value man does not chase emotions blindly. He observes, he studies, he decides. When someone remains in your thoughts, it often means they feel the same pull, but express it differently. This is where understanding female psychology becomes critical. Silence does not mean absence. Restraint does not mean indifference. Female psychology processes emotional bonds inwardly before revealing them outwardly. A high-value man does not guess. He leads. He understands that connection does not require constant communication. It requires clarity. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This applies here. The question is not why they think of you. The question is what you do with that awareness. Repeated thoughts are signals, not commands. In a world full of distractions, nostalgia, and unfinished conversations, Stoicism keeps you grounded. The old Stoic practiced mastery of self before mastery of others. That discipline sharpens your presence, strengthens your boundaries, elevates your decisions. Distance fades, time bends, but responsibility remains. The man who understands this does not rush. He does not plead. He does not spiral. He stays centered. He stays steady. He lets reality reveal itself. Seneca said, "He who is brave is free." Freedom comes from knowing connection does not control you. You control your response to it. When you live grounded in Stoicism, informed by female psychology, guided by the wisdom of the old Stoic, you naturally become a high-value man, calm under pressure, clear in intention, strong in silence. And when someone thinks of you deeply, they feel that strength whether they speak or not, because real presence is felt, not forced. Mastery always begins in the mind. Story moment. A boy once loved a girl deeply. Life pulled them in different directions and they separated, not because love ended, but because timing did. Years later, the boy became successful, yet something inside him always felt unfinished. Night after night, thoughts of her returned, her laugh, her calm, her eyes, not on purpose. It just happened. At the same time, somewhere else in the world, that same girl felt emotions she couldn't explain. While cooking, while walking, while hearing a familiar song, his presence crossed her mind without warning. That is the connection. He thought of her. She felt him. They didn't speak, but something still spoke between them. That's what happens when someone stays on your mind. Love, even in silence, still echoes. First truth. Don't dismiss repeated thoughts as coincidence. Be aware. Psychology tips show that strong emotional bonds don't fade easily. Love psychology explains that the mind holds on to what once mattered deeply. When thoughts return again and again, they carry meaning. Second truth, don't confuse silence with absence. Be clear. Relationship goals are not always about going back. Sometimes they're about understanding what shaped you. A modern Stoic observes emotions instead of reacting to them. He stays grounded. He learns the lesson without chasing the feeling. Third truth, don't ignore what your mind repeats. Be intentional. Psychology tips remind us that repetition signals importance. Love psychology shows that shared moments create lasting mental connections. You must decide what to do with that awareness, reflect, accept, and move forward with clarity. This is not about regret, it's about recognition. A modern Stoic understands that thoughts are signals, not commands. When someone stays on your mind, something real once existed. That truth doesn't control you, it strengthens you if you understand it. Part 3, your energy is reaching them. Here's the truth most people never tell you, and it deserves your full attention. When someone lives in your mind constantly, when they appear in your thoughts without permission and stay longer than logic allows, something real is happening beneath the surface. You are not imagining it, you are not being foolish, and you are not alone in this experience. You may believe your thoughts are quiet, that they are sealed off, that they stay safely inside your head, but that is not how the mind works. Thoughts carry energy. Emotion amplifies that energy, and energy moves, whether you acknowledge it or not. Every time you think of someone with genuine feeling, care, longing, concern, affection, your mind does more than remember them. It sends something outward. This is where psychology tips meet lived human experience. Your brain and body create emotional signals. Those signals don't stop at your skull. They influence posture, breathing, focus, sleep, and behavior. They also shape connections. That's why, so often, the moment someone crosses your mind, they text you, call you, or suddenly reappear. Don't dismiss this too quickly. Don't rush to label it coincidence. Be curious instead. Psychology shows that humans are highly sensitive to subtle cues, emotional memory, and unconscious attunement. When two people have shared meaning, especially romantic or emotionally charged meaning, their minds remain linked through association. That link doesn't vanish just because time passes or communication slows. That is why they might suddenly feel unsettled without knowing why. That is why their chest tightens, or warms, or feels restless late at night. They may not consciously think of you, but their nervous system reacts anyway. This is how deep connection behaves. It moves quietly. It bypasses logic. It shows up as a sensation before thought. Be honest with yourself. When you think of them, do you feel calm or alert? Do you feel drawn or protective? That feeling is information. It's your system responding to an emotional bond that still exists. Love advice often focuses on words and actions, but this is the layer beneath that, the silent layer where attachment lives and lingers. You don't need constant contact to maintain it. You don't need daily conversations to stay present in someone's inner world. Emotional memory doesn't expire on a schedule. The brain doesn't forget meaningful people easily because it is designed to protect what once mattered. That is why, even from far away, even after time has passed, they may suddenly think of you while driving or lying awake in the dark. This isn't an obsession. Don't label it that. It's a connection trying to resolve itself. Psychology tips tell us that unresolved emotional loops stay active until they find closure, clarity, or renewal. That's not a weakness. That's how the human mind seeks balance. Here's what many men overlook. This does not mean you should chase. Don't push. Don't intrude. That breaks the signal. Be grounded instead. Be steady. Energy responds to calm certainty, not pressure. When you hold someone in your mind with warmth instead of anxiety, with acceptance instead of demand, the connection feels safe on both ends. Dating tips often talk about strategy, but this is about alignment. When two people are emotionally tuned, they sense each other without effort. That's why they might feel an unexplained urge to reach out. That's why a memory surfaces for no clear reason. That's why something shifts inside them, even if they can't name it. You must understand this clearly. Silence does not equal absence. Distance does not equal disconnection. And time does not automatically weaken emotional bonds. Sometimes it sharpens them, especially when both people are still carrying the same unresolved meaning. Be patient with that truth. Don't rush to control it. Let it breathe. Let it unfold naturally. When someone stays on your mind, it's often because part of them is still in conversation with you, below the level of words. That conversation happens through emotion, memory, and bodily response. Love advice that ignores this misses the most powerful part of human bonding. You don't need to explain it to anyone else. You just need to recognize it. Be aware. Be intentional. Be calm. And most importantly, don't confuse connection with urgency. Awareness is not action. Feeling is not force. Let the connection guide you toward clarity, not confusion. That is how mature attraction works. That is how real alignment feels. And that is why, when someone is on your mind all the time, your energy isn't trapped inside you, it's already moving, already reaching, already being felt. Story moment. Once there was a woman who couldn't stop thinking about a man she once loved, not in a dramatic way, not in regret, just a quiet, steady presence in her mind. Years had passed. They had gone their separate ways. She had built a new life. He had built his. From the outside, the story looked finished. But the mind doesn't care about timelines. The heart doesn't follow calendars. Every night before she fell asleep, his memory returned. Not with pain, not with longing that burned, but with peace. A calm remembrance, a soft emotional echo. That matters. Because when a memory shows up without struggle, it means it has settled deep. Love psychology teaches us that unresolved emotional bonds don't always shout. Sometimes they whisper. Sometimes they arrive quietly, like a familiar song playing in another room. And somewhere in another city, the man would wake up at exactly 3 a.m. No alarm, no noise, just a sudden emotional shift, a feeling he couldn't explain. His chest felt heavier, then warmer. His thoughts drifted without effort. He'd reach for his phone, half asleep, and see her face appear in an old photo memory, and he'd whisper, almost annoyed at himself, "Why am I thinking about her tonight?" Don't ignore moments like that. They are signals, not accidents. That was her energy reaching him, not magic, not fantasy. Energy, in psychology tips terms, is attention combined with emotion. When the mind revisits someone with calm intensity, the body responds. When two people once shared meaning, their nervous systems remember. That invisible thread still existed between them, even after years of silence. Silence does not erase connection. Be clear about that. True connections don't disappear. They change form. They transform into emotional memory, into patterns stored deep in the brain. Relationship goals aren't only about building something new. Sometimes they are about understanding what still lives quietly within you. That's why this story matters. It shows the first truth. When someone stays on your mind, your presence still exists in theirs, often without either of you trying. Don't confuse this with a call to act impulsively. That is not strength. Be steady instead. Modern Stoic thinking reminds us that awareness does not demand reaction. It demands understanding. You must observe before you move. When a thought returns consistently, it's not asking you to chase, it's asking you to listen. Psychology tips explain that the brain holds on to emotionally meaningful connections as a form of continuity. It's how we maintain identity. It's how we measure safety and familiarity. That's why the man woke at 3 a.m. The mind is quieter then. Defenses are down. Emotional memory moves freely. Love psychology shows us that the body often reacts before the mind can explain it. Don't dismiss that invisible thread, but don't romanticize it either. Be grounded. Be honest. Ask yourself what the connection represents now, not what it was back then. Relationship goals at this stage of life aren't about chasing old chapters. They're about integrating lessons without bitterness. That's the deeper message of this story. The connection didn't fade because it was real. It transformed because both people grew. Energy doesn't cling, it flows. When handled with calm respect, it brings clarity instead of confusion. That is modern Stoic wisdom applied to human connection. So remember this, when someone is on your mind repeatedly, something is happening beneath awareness, not drama, not destiny, but emotional resonance. Don't rush it, don't fight it, be present with it, understand it. That is how a grounded man moves forward, aware, composed, and in control of his inner world. And that, quietly, is how real connection continues to speak, even when words are no longer exchanged. Bonus. Part 4. There is an unfinished emotional connection. When someone stays on your mind constantly, it often means there is an emotional connection that hasn't been fully resolved. This doesn't always mean you're meant to be with them. Sometimes it means there were words left unsaid. Sometimes emotions were buried instead of expressed. Sometimes a chapter ends too suddenly for your heart to understand. Your mind keeps returning to that person because your soul is still trying to make sense of the experience. Psychology tells us that the brain seeks closure, but spiritually, this goes even deeper. God allows certain people to linger in our thoughts, not to trap us in the past, but to invite healing. That memory isn't there to hurt you, it's there to show you what still needs attention. Maybe it's forgiveness, maybe it's acceptance, maybe it's learning to let go without resentment. Once you acknowledge the emotion instead of fighting it, the connection begins to loosen. Peace doesn't come from forgetting, it comes from understanding. And when that understanding arrives, your heart becomes lighter, calmer, and more aligned with where God is leading you next. Part 5. You are being prepared for growth. When someone occupies your thoughts again and again, when their presence lingers in your mind no matter how much time has passed, it is often not an accident. It is often a sign that God is doing a quiet work within you. You are being prepared for growth, even if it doesn't feel comfortable right now. Every person who leaves a deep imprint on your heart and mind comes carrying a lesson. Not everyone is meant to walk with you forever, but everyone is meant to teach you something meaningful. Some people come as blessings, others come as lessons wrapped in pain. But none of them come without purpose. God uses relationships, memories, and even emotional discomfort as tools to shape you. He uses them to stretch your heart, refine your character, and guide you toward a stronger, wiser version of yourself. What feels like confusion is often preparation. What feels like loss is often transformation. That person who keeps returning to your thoughts may have been sent to teach you powerful truths, such as what you truly deserve and what you should never settle for again, what you are no longer called to tolerate, excuse, or endure, how deeply and sincerely you are capable of loving, or how important it is to trust God fully instead of clinging tightly to people. Sometimes God allows attachment so you can learn discernment. Sometimes He allows distance so you can learn dependence on Him. And sometimes He allows heartbreak so your faith can grow roots deeper than your emotions. When the lesson has been learned, something beautiful happens. The emotional grip begins to loosen, not through force, not through denial, and not through struggle. It fades naturally, quietly, gently. You don't have to fight it. You simply gain clarity. And with that clarity comes growth. You begin to see yourself with stronger self-worth. Your faith deepens because you've learned to lean on God instead of fear. Your mind becomes more peaceful because you're no longer resisting the process, and your heart slowly opens, ready to receive new blessings without carrying old wounds. This is why you must trust the process, even when you don't understand it. God never allows emotional connections without intention. He never wastes your tears, your prayers, or your waiting. If someone is on your mind all the time, it does not mean you are weak. It does not mean you are broken, and it does not mean you are moving backward. Often it means something is being built within you: faith, wisdom, strength, and surrender. And what comes next, when you finally let go with faith, not fear, may be far greater than what you are holding on to now. Sometimes God removes what feels familiar so he can make room for what is aligned. Sometimes he closes a chapter so the next one can begin with peace. Be patient with yourself. Be gentle with your heart. God is not finished with you yet. Reflection moment. Close your eyes for a moment and let the noise fall away. When someone stays on your mind all the time, something meaningful is happening beneath the surface. This is where quiet psychology tips meet lived experience. Think of that one person who keeps showing up in your thoughts, uninvited but persistent. Don't fight it. Don't rush to label it. Don't turn it into a story that unsettles you. Just breathe and stay with it. Because the mind doesn't cling without a reason, and the heart doesn't repeat a name unless there is a lesson attached. Ask yourself what this connection is pointing toward, and be honest. Sometimes the answer is not romance. Sometimes it is recognition. Sometimes it is not desire, but direction. Sometimes it is not attachment, but awareness. That is where real love advice begins. Not with chasing feelings, but with understanding them. This is the first thing happening when someone lives in your thoughts. The bond is acting like a mirror. It reflects a part of you that wants attention, healing, or clarity. And that reflection works both ways because human connection is subtle, emotional, and deeply psychological. This is why many dating tips miss the deeper truth. Repeated thoughts are less about possession and more about meaning. Be still and ask what this presence is teaching you. Be open to the idea that it may be showing you how to open up, how to soften, how to forgive, or how to finally release something you've been carrying for a long time. These are not accidents. These are signals. And psychology tips remind us that signals are meant to be read, not ignored. The second thing happening is emotional resonance. Unfinished feelings echo until they are understood, not resolved by action, but by insight. The brain revisits what hasn't been completed, what hasn't been named, what hasn't been learned from yet. Don't distract yourself. Don't numb the thought. Don't dismiss it. Be curious instead. Curiosity turns confusion into growth, and growth changes how you see yourself. Often, the person on your mind represents a chapter, a turning point, or a version of yourself you once were, or still want to become. That realization alone can bring relief. The third thing happening is alignment. When someone stays in your mind, it often means your values, hopes, or emotional patterns are brushing up against theirs. That friction creates awareness, not always comfort, but always information. This is powerful love advice, especially for men who were taught to treat emotions like problems to solve instead of messages to hear. Don't chase the thought. Don't dramatize it. Don't turn it into pressure. Understand it. Understanding calms the nervous system. Understanding gives you control without force. Remember this, sometimes thinking about someone is not about missing them. It's about meeting yourself. It's about recognizing what your inner life is asking for right now. Connection, closure, courage. When you accept that, dating tips stop being tactics and start being truths. Clarity always beats strategy. Presence always beats pursuit. That is one of the most grounded psychology tips you can carry with you. Be patient with your thoughts. Be respectful of your emotions. Be honest about what you feel without rushing to act. Reflection is not inactivity, it is preparation. When you listen instead of running, when you learn instead of resisting, you grow. And growth changes how you show up in every relationship, romantic or otherwise. That is why the best love advice is often quiet. It doesn't shout. It stays. It guides you toward a steadier heart, a clearer mind, and a deeper understanding of why some people cross your path not to stay forever, but to teach you something that lasts. When someone is on your mind all the time, remember these three truths, not as a fantasy, not as a coincidence, but as something worth noticing, because thoughts that return again and again are never random. First truth, your energy is reaching them. Your energy is reaching them. They can feel your emotion even from afar. You don't need to believe in anything mystical to understand this. You've felt it before. You walk into a room and sense tension without a word being spoken. You think of someone and your chest tightens for no clear reason. That is emotional awareness at work. Psychology tips often remind us that emotion is not passive. It moves, it carries direction. When someone stays in your mind, your thoughts are charged with feeling, and feeling leaves an imprint. Don't brush this off. Be honest with yourself. Deep focus carries weight. In love psychology, this is called emotional resonance. Two people don't need to speak to feel each other. They only need to have once mattered. Second truth, they are thinking of you too. They are thinking of you too. That invisible thread between your souls still connects. Connections don't end just because conversations do. They don't dissolve simply because time passes. Think of it like an old song. You may stop playing it, but the melody still lives somewhere inside you. That invisible thread isn't pulling you backward. It's reminding you that something real once existed. Relationship goals that last are never built on constant contact. They're built on mutual impact. Don't assume silence means absence. Don't assume distance means disconnection. Be grounded. Be calm. Modern Stoic thinking teaches this clearly. You don't chase what you feel, you observe it. Understanding a connection doesn't mean acting on it. It means respecting what it once taught you. Third truth, the universe is giving you a message. The universe is giving you a message. There's a reason you can't stop thinking of them. Every repeated thought carries information. Ignore it, and it returns louder. Don't see that connection as pain. See it as purpose. Maybe they weren't meant to stay, but they were meant to awaken something in you. Maybe they weren't part of your future, but they were sent to shape your heart for it. That is how growth works. Not everything that matters lasts forever. Psychology tips rooted in experience say this clearly. Memory is not an enemy. It's a mirror. Every thought has a reason. Every connection has a season. And every person who crosses your mind carries a message from the universe. You must ask yourself one simple question. What did this connection change in me? Understanding what it really means. So the next time someone won't leave your thoughts, smile gently and say, I understand now. This isn't just my mind, it's my soul remembering. Because souls never forget each other. Even when time, distance, and silence separate them, they find each other again, in thought, in dreams, in feeling. And sometimes that's where true love lives, not in presence, not in words, but in the quiet corners of your mind, where their memory still feels like home. This isn't about longing, it's about meaning. Modern Stoic men don't deny emotion, they learn from it. They let memories exist without letting them control their future. They respect the past without being trapped inside it. That balance is strength. Final reflection. If someone has been on your mind lately, this is your sign that the connection between you still exists, somewhere, somehow. They may be far away, but your thoughts are the bridge. And tonight, when you think of them, maybe they'll feel a sudden warmth in their heart without knowing it's you. That, my friend, is the beautiful mystery of souls. It's why love psychology continues to speak to men who've lived long enough to understand loss and meaning. It's why relationship goals evolve from passion into wisdom. It's why psychology tips grounded in truth last longer than trends. And it's why modern Stoic thinking doesn't harden the heart, it sharpens it. Welcome to Blessing of Stoicism. If you're curious about the hidden truths of the mind and heart, make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell icon so you never miss a fact that could change the way you see. 10 signs you both are truly meant to be together. Psychology tips. Real love doesn't rush in loudly, it arrives quietly and stays. Have you ever felt drawn to someone without feeling off balance? No obsession, no confusion, just a quiet sense of rightness you couldn't explain. That feeling isn't accidental. Don't ignore it. Be aware of it. Psychology tips show that the mind recognizes alignment before the heart can name it. Many men chase intensity and mistake excitement for meaning, but intensity fades when life gets real. What lasts is clarity, calm, stability. That is essential love advice most men learn too late. Real connection doesn't drain you, it steadies you. You don't feel pressured to impress or perform. You feel grounded. If reflections like this speak to you and help you see relationships more clearly, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future insights designed to guide you with honesty and depth. When two people are truly meant to be together, the relationship doesn't feel rushed or forced. It feels intentional. Conversations flow. Silence feels natural. Decisions feel clearer. Dating tips rooted in psychology remind us that emotional safety and consistency matter more than sparks. This isn't about coincidence, that is about design. And once you understand these psychology tips, guided by honest love advice and practical dating tips, you stop chasing what looks exciting and start choosing what is real. Let's begin. 1. You're drawn together again and again. That's the first sign. And it's not an accident. No matter what happens, even if life separates you by distance, misunderstanding, or timing, something always pulls you back. You don't chase it. You don't scheme. It just happens. One day, out of nowhere, a name reappears. A message arrives. A familiar laugh echoes in your mind. And suddenly, the past isn't past anymore. This is not about obsession. It's about alignment. In love psychology, recurring connection is one of the strongest indicators that two people are wired to grow together. When a bond is real, it doesn't fade quietly. It waits. It pauses. Then it resumes right where it left off. Think about it. You've both lived full lives in between. You've made mistakes. You've changed. And yet, when you meet again, the connection still fits. Maybe deeper, maybe calmer, but unmistakably familiar. Be honest with yourself. That doesn't happen with just anyone. It could be months, even years later, but somehow your paths cross again. Same city, same event, same moment when both of you are finally ready. Timing, it turns out, is not random. It's selective. This is one of those quiet psychology tips men often overlook. What returns without force is worth attention. What keeps resurfacing without pressure deserves respect. Don't rush to label it fate just yet. Observe it. When it's meant to be, it won't require force. That's critical. You don't need clever lines or constant reassurance. There's no exhausting emotional tug-of-war. Conversations flow. Silence feels safe. Disagreements don't feel like threats. That is not luck. That is compatibility. The connection finds a way, like rivers that always find the sea. Rivers don't argue with the terrain. They don't panic at obstacles. They adapt. They bend. They continue. Slowly, surely, relentlessly. In relationship goals, this kind of bond isn't loud or dramatic. It's steady. It survives distance. It survives ego. It survives time. And time is the real test. Because when two souls share a divine bond, life keeps giving them second chances to meet, heal, and grow together. Not to repeat the same mistakes, but to correct them. That's the key. Growth. A connection that returns is asking a question. Are you wiser now? Are you calmer? Are you more grounded than before? If the answer is yes, the bond deepens. If not, it waits again. This idea aligns closely with the modern Stoic mindset. You don't cling. You don't resist. You allow life to reveal what stays when everything else falls away. You can't escape destiny. You can only delay it. Men understand this better than they admit. You can ignore the signs. You can distract yourself with work, routines, or comfort. But when something keeps returning without knocking, it's not there to disrupt your life. It's there to complete a lesson. Don't confuse intensity with meaning. Don't confuse convenience with truth. Real connection is calm. It's persistent. It doesn't shout. It waits until you're ready to listen. This is why psychology tips about love often point to repetition without chaos as a marker of depth. not fireworks, not drama, continuity. And here's the hard truth many men learn late: the right person doesn't demand that you become someone else. They reveal who you already are at your best. Be present when life brings someone back. Be honest about why they returned. Be willing to grow into the man the connection requires. That is what love psychology teaches us over time. That is what real relationship goals are built on. And that is how a modern Stoic recognizes destiny, not by chasing it, but by finally standing still long enough to let it arrive. 2. Your souls recognize each other instantly. You don't recognize it with your eyes at first. You recognize it with your nervous system. That's where the first sign lives. Not logic, not strategy, recognition. You meet her and something unusual happens. Your body relaxes instead of tightening. Your mind slows instead of racing. You don't feel the urge to impress, perform, or sell a version of yourself. You simply are. And that is rare. This is the moment seasoned men notice immediately, especially men who have lived, lost, rebuilt, and refined themselves. An old Stoic would tell you this: excitement is loud, but truth is quiet. And Stoicism teaches that what is meant for you does not disturb your inner order, it restores it. Think about modern life for a moment. Dating is noisy. Everyone is rushing. Everyone is performing. Everyone is marketing. So when you encounter someone who brings calm instead of chaos, your instincts wake up. Your system says, pay attention. This isn't chemistry. This is alignment. You feel understood without explaining yourself. You feel comfortable in silence. Conversation flows, but it doesn't feel forced. Time bends. An hour feels like minutes. Minutes feel like nothing at all. You don't feel younger or older. You feel centered. That's not a coincidence. That's recognition. Carl Jung once said, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Notice the word transformed. Not drained. Not confused. Transformed. This is where female psychology matters more than most men realize. A woman responds deeply to emotional safety, grounded presence, and consistency. Not theatrics. Not pressure. Not intensity for intensity's sake. When she senses a man who is calm, settled, and internally ordered, she feels it immediately. This is why the high-value man doesn't chase reactions. He creates stability. And here's the sharp truth most men miss. If your heart is at peace, you're not settling. You're selecting wisely. A man shaped by Stoicism understands that desire without peace becomes chaos, but peace with desire becomes power. That's why an old Stoic never mistakes anxiety for passion. He knows better. He's been there. He's paid the price. In modern relationships, this sign stands out even more because it's so uncommon. No push, no pull, no power games, just a quiet sense of this fits, like a door that opens without resistance. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." When the connection is right, your thoughts soften. Your inner dialogue shifts from defense to openness. You're not guarded. You're grounded. This is where men between 35 and 70 have the advantage. You're no longer seduced by noise. You recognize patterns. You respect peace. You value alignment over drama. That's the mark of a high-value man, discernment. So here is the instruction, clear and decisive. Trust calm. Observe how your body responds. Notice who brings you home to yourself instead of pulling you away from your center. Because when two souls are meant to walk together, they don't rush. They remember. They recognize. And in a world addicted to speed, the man who can identify stillness masters love, masters life, and moves forward with quiet, undeniable victory. 3. Silence between you feels peaceful, not awkward. Here's the truth men learn only after decades of living, building, losing, and rebuilding. When silence between you feels calm instead of uncomfortable, you are standing in something rare, something earned, something real. With most people, silence feels like pressure, like a test, like a gap that must be filled with noise, jokes, explanations, or reassurance. But with the right woman, silence feels steady, grounded, alive, as if nothing is missing at all. This is not romance fantasy. This is psychology. This is alignment. This is what happens when two nervous systems recognize safety in each other. When your presence alone communicates trust, respect, and mutual understanding. That's why experienced thinkers have always said, what is meant for you will never require force. True connection does not beg for attention. It does not demand constant validation. It does not drain your energy. It restores it. In modern life, where phones never stop buzzing, where conversations are shallow and attention is fragmented, peaceful silence has become one of the clearest signals you are with the right person. Silence reveals truth faster than words ever can. An old Stoic understood this long before modern psychology named it. Comfort in stillness is proof of inner order, not emotional dependence. This is where Stoicism meets love. Stoicism is not emotional distance. It is emotional control, clarity, choosing what truly matters. A high-value man knows this instinctively. He does not chase noise. He does not fear quiet moments. He knows strength shows up as calm, not performance. His silence carries confidence, not uncertainty. Female psychology confirms this again and again. Women feel safest with men who are internally settled. Men whose presence steadies the room. Men who do not rush to fill space because they trust who they are. That is when silence becomes intimacy. Because energy speaks before words ever do. And when your energy is clean, regulated, and grounded, connection flows without effort, without pressure, without confusion. Peace is not the absence of noise. It is the presence of order. And that order appears when two people can share space without tension. For men navigating relationships later in life, this is your compass. Seek the woman with whom silence feels like home. Build yourself into the man whose calm leads naturally. Mastery in life is not loud. Victory is not chaotic. And love that lasts does not shout. It settles. It stabilizes. It strengthens. When you live as an old Stoic, practice Stoicism daily, understand female psychology without trying to control it, and move through the world as a high-value man, you stop chasing connections. You recognize it instantly. Because when silence feels right, everything else follows. 4. You grow spiritually because of each other. When two people are truly meant to be together, something quiet yet powerful starts happening beneath the surface. You grow spiritually because of each other. Not through dramatic speeches, not through forced change. It happens through presence, through just enough pressure, and through shared purpose. This is what many people miss when they chase comfort instead of truth. A true soulmate doesn't come to fill a hole in your life or rescue you from loneliness. That is a myth. Be clear about that. They come to wake you up. They stir parts of you that have been asleep for years. They push you to evolve beyond old habits, old thinking, and emotional wounds you once accepted as just the way life is. This kind of love can feel intense, sometimes uncomfortable. Because real love is not meant to keep you safely the same. It is meant to transform you. Don't confuse peace with stagnation. Don't confuse challenge with incompatibility. Many men walk away too early because they misunderstand this. That is one of the most overlooked psychology tips when it comes to deep connection. A woman who is truly aligned with you will naturally inspire you to respect yourself more, raise your standards, and look honestly at the fears and insecurities you've quietly carried for years. She doesn't need to point them out. Her presence does the work. At times, you may feel exposed. Don't run from that feeling. That is not a weakness. That is growth asking for your attention. You must understand this. When you are with the right person, your wounds don't disappear overnight, but for the first time, they begin to heal because you stop running from them. This is powerful love advice many men only learn through experience. She challenges you not through constant conflict, but by being a mirror that reflects who you really are. And somehow, even after difficult conversations, even when emotions run high, You walk away stronger, clearer, and more grounded than before. That is the difference between a relationship that passes time and one that shapes your life. Most surface level dating tips never explain this. Real love doesn't make life easier right away. It makes you better over time. Be honest with yourself. Ask who you become around her. More patient, more intentional, more alive. That is your answer. Your souls don't meet just for romance or attraction, but for evolution, for becoming a man who lives with purpose instead of drifting on autopilot. That is why this connection feels different from the rest. It has depth, it has direction, it has weight. Don't resist growth just because it feels unfamiliar. Be present, be accountable, be willing to rise. When you do, love stops being just a feeling and becomes a force, guided by real psychology tips, grounded love advice, and meaningful dating tips that point you toward who you are becoming, not who you used to be. 5. You feel their energy even when they're far away. Have you ever thought about someone out of nowhere and suddenly they texted you? Or felt heavy for no reason, then found out they were struggling that day? That's not a coincidence. That's an energy connection. This is one of the clearest signs you are truly meant to be together. And it sits at the heart of love psychology. When two people are deeply aligned, something quiet but powerful happens beneath the surface. Their inner worlds start to communicate without words. No effort, no planning, just awareness. When two souls are meant to be together, their energies remain intertwined. You feel their moods, emotions, and presence, no matter the distance. Think of it like an invisible thread connecting your hearts. Not tight, not suffocating, just steady, always there. You may be in different cities, different time zones, or different phases of life. Yet, something subtle keeps you tuned in, like an old radio that still catches the same frequency after all these years. This isn't fantasy. It's grounded in psychology tips about emotional attunement and empathy. When trust is real, your nervous systems learn from each other. You start to sense shifts. Silence feels different. A laugh sounds lighter. A message arrives right when you are thinking of them. That is not magic. That is a connection refined by time and sincerity. You don't need constant contact to know they care. You simply know. That knowing matters, especially for men who value stability and depth. A modern Stoic understands this well. He doesn't chase reassurance. He doesn't demand attention every hour. He trusts patterns, not noise. He observes how calm replaces anxiety when the bond is real. Don't confuse this with dependency. Be clear about that. A true energy connection doesn't drain you. It steadies you. It makes you more focused, not distracted. You still stand on your own feet, but you walk better knowing someone is moving in rhythm with you. This is where relationship goals quietly take shape, not in grand gestures, not in constant validation, but in the ability to live your life and still feel accompanied, even in silence, even in distance. You must pay attention to how you feel when you think of them, not excited in a restless way, calm, grounded, certain. That is the signal. In love psychology, this is often described as emotional resonance. Two people responding to life with similar timing and values. When something goes wrong for them, you sense it. When something good happens, you feel lighter without knowing why. Later, the truth shows up, and it clicks. Don't ignore that pattern. Be honest with yourself. For a modern Stoic, this kind of bond is rare and valuable. It doesn't shout. It doesn't beg for attention. It endures. It aligns with long-term relationship goals built on respect, presence, and inner strength. You don't need to explain it to everyone. You don't need to prove it. You simply know. And in the world of psychology tips and practical wisdom, that quiet certainty is often the loudest truth of all. 6. You understand each other without explanation. When two people are truly meant to be together, understanding happens without negotiation, without explanation, without noise. Real connection does not live in words. It lives in awareness. As an old Stoic principle reminds us, what is meant for you will never require force. When alignment is real, Effort decreases and clarity increases. Silence feels safe. A single look carries more truth than a long conversation. You recognize it when she senses your heaviness before you admit it, when you understand her emotional state without asking a single question. This is not fantasy or coincidence. This is a psychology meeting presence. This is female psychology responding naturally to emotional stability and self-mastery. This is what happens when a high-value man no longer over-explains himself to be understood. Stoicism is not emotional distance. Stoicism is an emotional command. It is knowing where you stand and not being dragged by impulse. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." When your thoughts are ordered, disciplined, and intentional, that energy radiates outward. She feels your calm before she hears your voice. Stoicism teaches you to speak less but mean more, to react slower but act cleaner. That steadiness creates safety, and safety builds deep connections. In modern life, where phones constantly buzz, attention is fragmented, and people talk endlessly but rarely listen, this kind of connection is rare. When you are fully present, you don't need to perform. When you are grounded, you don't seek validation. Presence is power. Presence is attractive. An old Stoic understands that silence, used correctly, builds trust faster than excess words. When two people are on the same frequency, it isn't mystical. It's alignment in values, behavior, and emotional rhythm. Female psychology responds to consistency, not promises. A high-value man understands that words are tools, not crutches. He knows that real connection doesn't need pressure. It unfolds naturally. Burn this into your mind. When it's right, it's effortless. When it's aligned, it's calm. When it's real, it's mutual. In a world that pushes you to rush, perform, and explain yourself endlessly, the instruction is clear. Master your inner state. Live by Stoicism. Carry the calm authority of an old Stoic. When you do, the right woman won't need convincing. She will feel it. She will recognize it. And together, you move forward with clarity, confidence, and quiet victory. 7. You met at the right, but sometimes painful, time. You didn't meet her when life was calm, comfortable, or predictable. And that is the first truth you must understand if you want to recognize a bond that is truly meant to last. Real connections don't arrive when everything is easy. They arrive when you are tested, when routines break, when confidence is shaken, when the old story of who you were no longer fits. This is not coincidence. This is alignment through pressure. Pain is not a mistake here. Pain is the doorway. As Carl Jung said, "Where your fear is, there is your task." When two people meet in moments of inner strain, it is because growth is required, not comfort. You are not brought together to distract each other from unresolved wounds. You are brought together to see them clearly, face them honestly, and rise stronger because of them. This is something every old Stoic understood deeply. Life refines through resistance, not ease. Stoicism teaches that hardship is not punishment, it is preparation, and the same principle applies to love. When a relationship begins during uncertainty, emotional weight, or personal rebuilding, it often signals that both people are ready to evolve, not ready to be perfect, ready to be real. Modern life misleads men into believing that the right relationship should feel effortless from day one. That belief clouds judgment. A high-value man knows better. He knows meaning is forged, not handed out. He understands female psychology well enough to recognize that deep bonds form when emotional honesty replaces performance, when masks fall, when two people stop pretending they have it all figured out. You didn't meet her to run from your confusion. You met her to understand it. You didn't meet her to numb loneliness. You met her to confront it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The obstacle in the path becomes the path. The difficulty at the beginning is not a warning sign. It is a signal that something important is being shaped." In today's world, where relationships are disposable and attention is scattered, This kind of meeting demands discipline, clarity, and leadership. This is where Stoicism matters. This is where the old Stoic mindset separates impulse from purpose. Stay grounded, observe patterns, choose growth over reaction. A high value man does not chase comfort, he builds stability. He does not rush meaning, he earns it. When both of you are willing to face discomfort, communicate directly, and grow instead of retreat, the bond becomes a force, not fantasy. Force. Remember this: timing is not about ease, it is about readiness. The universe does not ask if it's convenient, it asks if you are prepared to become more. Master yourself, lead your life, and if you rise, the connection rises with you. 8. The relationship feels safe, even during storms. When a relationship is truly meant to last, it feels safe even when everything else feels shaky. That safety is not the absence of conflict, it is the presence of trust. True love is not a quiet lake with no wind, it is a strong ship that stays steady when the waves rise. Don't believe the myth that real love never argues. Be clear about this. Arguments are normal. Disrespect is not. You can feel irritated, worn down by life, or frustrated by misunderstandings, yet still carry a deep inner knowing that the person across from you is not an enemy. They are your person. That certainty changes everything. You may disagree strongly. You may need space to cool off. But deep down, you know this relationship is not something you need to defend yourself from. You don't walk away at the first sign of tension. You don't threaten distance or silence as a weapon. Be present, stay grounded, choose the connection even when it feels uncomfortable. That is one of the most practical psychology tips many men learn only after years of trial and error. Love that lasts is not about avoiding friction. It is about knowing how to move through it without losing respect. When the bond is right, problems stop feeling personal. They become shared challenges. You face them side by side instead of standing on opposite sides of the room. Don't turn disagreements into battles. Be curious instead of reactive. That is where real strength shows up. The foundation of lasting love is not pride or control. It is empathy. It is the ability to say, I hear you, even when emotions are high, and I'm still here, even when things feel heavy. You must understand this if you want a relationship that feels secure rather than exhausting. This is honest love advice that matters more than surface-level dating tips. Attraction may start the relationship, but emotional safety is what keeps it alive. Dating tips often talk about excitement and chemistry, yet real depth reveals itself during hard conversations, quiet repairs, and moments when both people choose understanding over being right. Don't chase drama. Don't confuse chaos with passion. Be with someone who stays respectful under pressure, who listens when it would be easier to defend, who values the bond more than their own ego. Here is the quiet truth most psychology tips point toward. When love is genuine, storms don't pull you apart, they bring you closer. Every resolved conflict adds trust. Every honest conversation builds stability. Over time, you realize that safety does not make love boring. It makes it powerful. It creates a partnership that can handle stress, time, and change without falling apart. Remember this love advice, apply these dating tips wisely, and hold on to this truth. The right relationship does not promise a life without storms. It promises that you will never face the storm alone. 9. The world feels different when you're together. When you're truly aligned with someone, the world feels different when you're together. Not in a dramatic movie script way. In a quiet, unmistakable way. Colors seem brighter. Not because life suddenly became perfect, but because your nervous system relaxes. Your attention sharpens. Your mind stops bracing for impact. That's love psychology at work. When your brain feels safe, perception opens up. You see more. You feel more. Time feels slower. That's not romance. That's regulation. When you're with the right person, your body exits survival mode. You're no longer rushing toward the next task or defending your position. You're present, fully present. And presence stretches time. That is one of the most underrated psychology tips men can learn. Even silence feels meaningful. No need to fill the air. No pressure to perform. You can sit there, breathing, thinking, being. That's not boredom. That's comfort at a deep level. A sign your inner guard has lowered. A core pillar of real relationship goals. It's as if the universe itself smiles when you're together. That metaphor matters. Because when two people are aligned, their internal rhythms sync. Heart rate, breath, emotional pacing. This is not poetry. This is biology. Your systems cooperate instead of competing. That's what divine alignment feels like. Not loud, not chaotic. Steady, grounded, clean. Everything around you vibrates in harmony with your love. That doesn't mean life gets easy. It means life gets clearer. Animals feel calmer. Because animals read energy, not words. When two people are settled within themselves and with each other, that calm spreads outward. Songs make more sense. Lyrics land differently. Melodies hit deeper. Why? Because emotional resonance increases when you're regulated. You don't just hear sound. You receive meaning. Coincidences multiply. Not because fate suddenly woke up, but because awareness sharpens. You notice patterns. You connect dots. Your mind is no longer cluttered with noise. It's not fantasy. Don't dismiss it as imagination. It's frequency. Your combined energy changes your reality. Not mystically, practically. From a modern Stoic perspective, this matters. A modern Stoic doesn't chase chaos or drama. He values clarity, stability, inner order. And when a relationship enhances those things instead of draining them, you pay attention. Be honest with yourself. Don't force intensity where peace is missing. Don't confuse tension with connection. Don't ignore how your body feels when you're with her. You must observe the effect, not the story. How do you sleep? How do you speak? How do you handle pressure together? That is the test. Real relationship goals aren't about fireworks every night. They're about alignment that makes life feel more navigable. Love psychology shows us this again and again. The right bond simplifies your inner world. Remember this. A connection that brings harmony isn't loud. It's steady. It's grounding. It quietly upgrades your reality. And once you feel that frequency, you don't argue with it. 10. You feel grateful without knowing why. When two people are truly meant to walk the same path, the clearest signal is not obsession, not chemistry, not even the word love. It is gratitude, calm, steady, the kind you feel deep in your chest when you wake up and realize you are thankful this person exists in the world, not because they complete you, but because they align with you. That gratitude becomes the quiet proof that your values, timing, and direction are in harmony. This truth was understood by every old Stoic who knew that peace is the highest form of wealth. When her happiness naturally lifts yours and her calm steadies your mind, you are not chasing emotion. You are standing in balance. And balance is what Stoicism teaches men to recognize and protect. Marcus Aurelius said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts, and when your thoughts turn instinctively toward appreciation instead of anxiety, control instead of fear, you are witnessing a connection that strengthens rather than drains." This is a connection built for endurance in modern life, where distractions are constant and attention is scarce. This is also where female psychology quietly reveals itself. A woman does not bond deeply with words or promises. She bonds with consistency, safety, and presence. The kind a high-value man offers without performance or pressure. Simply by being grounded, decisive, emotionally steady. Gratitude in a relationship is not passive. It is active awareness. It is recognizing that distance does not weaken alignment and obstacles do not cancel intention. When two people are truly meant to be together, they do not cling. They cooperate. They do not demand. They choose. They do not merge identities. They walk side by side. Seneca captured this clearly when he wrote, "Where there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness." Kindness, when paired with strength, creates loyalty that lasts decades, not moments. In today's world of instant gratification, the man who understands Stoicism knows that calm attachment outperforms emotional intensity every time. The man who understands female psychology knows that gratitude felt without explanation is often the deepest sign of trust forming. When you feel thankful for her peace, her presence, her existence, even when she is not beside you, that is not fantasy. That is alignment. And alignment is rare. A high value man does not confuse desire with destiny. He watches patterns. He measures consistency. He notices how his nervous system responds. When his body relaxes instead of braces, when his mind sharpens instead of scatters, he knows he is standing in something real, something built for the long game, something worthy of protection and leadership. Gratitude is not the reward at the end of the journey. It is the signal you are already walking the right road. Mastery in life, mastery in relationships, mastery in self, all begin the same way, by recognizing what brings peace and choosing it, again and again, without hesitation, without apology, just as the old Stoics taught, just as Stoicism demands, and just as every high-value man must learn if he intends to build a life that feels like victory. Final reflection. Love like this is not ordinary. At this stage of life, you already know the difference between passing attraction and something that steadies your breath and sharpens your purpose. Real connection doesn't create noise. It creates clarity. When two people are truly meant to walk together, life stops feeling like a constant battle and starts feeling like a disciplined march forward. Calm, focused, intentional. This kind of bond feels less like luck and more like alignment, as if timing finally stopped resisting you and began cooperating. One of the clearest psychological signs you are meant to be together is this: peace replaces confusion, growth replaces stagnation, and your energy rises instead of draining away. Carl Jung said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." Transformation is the signal. The right woman does not pull you away from your mission. She refines it. She challenges you. She strengthens your resolve. Any old Stoic would recognize this immediately. Stoicism teaches that what is truly aligned brings tranquility, not turmoil. In modern life, where distractions are constant and relationships often feel transactional, this calm is rare. And rare things are valuable. Another sign is mutual respect without negotiation. You don't need to posture, perform, or prove your worth. She sees it. You see hers. This is where female psychology becomes clear. A woman who feels safe and inspired by a man does not seek chaos. She seeks partnership and direction. A high-value man does not chase validation. He recognizes resonance. He chooses deliberately. He protects what is real. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." When you are with the right person, your thoughts sharpen. Your standards rise. Your future becomes vivid, not vague. That clarity is not accidental. It is alignment in motion. Conflict is another test. When you are meant to be together, conflict does not destroy the bond. It strengthens it. Disagreements become adjustments, not threats. Both of you are oriented towards solutions, not winning. This is Stoicism in action. Respond, don't react. Build, don't break. In today's world, many men feel pressure to constantly adapt, compromise, or shrink themselves. This kind of connection feels like standing on solid ground again. That is not a coincidence. That is readiness meeting readiness. Life waited until you were prepared to recognize what matters. The universe does not hand out these connections casually. It responds to inner alignment. When you have done the work, refined your values, embraced the mindset of an old Stoic, and stepped fully into the identity of a high-value man, you don't stumble into love. You walk into it with awareness. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." The right partner reflects that decision back to you through her actions, her support, her presence. If you have met someone who calms your mind, sharpens your focus, respects your boundaries, and grows alongside you, stop questioning it. Questioning is hesitation. Hesitation dissolves momentum. Protect what is aligned. Lead with certainty. Invest with discipline and gratitude. Mastery in life includes mastery in love. And when alignment appears, you move forward grounded in stoicism, aware of female psychology and confident in the path you are building together.